On the other hand, Seo Kelly was having dinner with her daughter Hajun, who couldn't understand why her mother hired such an arrogant person. The reason she hired him was exactly because he reminded her of herself. However, Hajun didn't see it that way. She arrived at her room, recalling the time she accidentally bumped into him at the bar. Seeing him vulnerable made her realize he was a great person. To her surprise, she got excited about the idea of winning him over for herself. Meanwhile, Hajun had gone out for a work dinner. As usual, they started drinking and playing a bottle game. If someone didn't answer a question, they had to drink. To everyone's surprise, it was Ms. Dummy Moon's turn. They asked if she liked anyone, and it was so obvious. She answered yes, but when the bottle spun again, it landed on her. This time they asked if the person she liked worked at the hospital. If she answered yes, they'd guess who it was because there were only 2 men in the clinic. She drank, and when the bottle spun again, it landed on her once more. She was about to drink again because it was the same question, but this time John would drink for her. Would he be her knight in shining armor? After drinking, he tried to leave, but then Dami ran after him, grabbed him, and, because he was her knight, she offered him a wish. Whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. After saying this, she ran off, leaving Jian very confused. In the following days, Jia's mother was having lunch with her co-workers. They were all around her age, so they gossip and complain about their sons-in-law. It seemed none of them had one worth praising. Just then, Jiamin arrived. The old ladies, being curious, wanted to know who he was, and he introduced himself as the man madly in love with their daughter, and everyone envied him. But really, he had only come to earn points with his future mother-in-law, bringing coffee for everyone. Afterward, he left. And, of course, all the women wished they had such a handsome and attentive son-in-law. It seemed he finally earned some extra points with his future mother-in-law. On the other hand, Jinjon was standing in front of Kijon, but couldn't think about anything except for that, "I love you." He was about to explain to Kijon that they couldn't be together, but before he could say anything, she stopped him. She told him not to respond now. She didn't mind waiting years for a positive answer. She only wanted to spend time with him, and so she planned a dinner for that night. As evening approached, they were about to go out for dinner, but just then Jaebon opened the car door and asked Jinjon to get out and come with him. He wanted to take her out for something nice to eat. At that moment, Kijon was furious. The man who had caused her so much pain now wanted to get her back. He started talking, saying that a divorce wasn't a child's game, or maybe to Jaebon, Prosecutor Chang was just a toy. It seemed he was still an idiot. He began blaming Jaebon for everything, but all of it seemed irrelevant to her. Jinjan could no longer tolerate it, but Kijan asked her if she was going to keep letting that fool hurt her. She didn't understand why he was reacting this way, but he told her it was because he loved her. Didn't she remember that he was her soulmate, her partner? He said his heart was broken after seeing her cry so many times. This made her think back to how he had been with her but for Jaebon. This was the decisive moment, so Jinjun decided not to go with Jaebon. Meanwhile, Jia was with her mother. She wanted to talk about her boss and confessed that he had been visiting her and seemed to know how to keep secrets. Jia's mother was happy to hear that, but then she asked about Jiamin's parents, and everything started to go wrong. Jia told her that he didn't have parents. Her mother became upset, and Jia tried to explain that they had all passed away when he was a child. Her mother agreed, realizing that something was hidden in this man. That's why he had that look. That's why he was so dark. She then told Jia that before it was too late, she should separate from him. We began after hearing her mother's nonsense. Jia couldn't tolerate her continuing to speak ill of her boyfriend. Her mother gave her illogical reasons, like that he didn't have any family to support him, and that one day the good job he had would come to an end, and he would end up nothing. These things sounded out of place to Jia. Unfortunately, she had to put her mother in her place because she didn't know her mother was so materialistic, or did she want to benefit from her marriage? Jia reminded her that she had married a wealthy man, and what happened? He abandoned her. Money, fame, and everything else didn't matter. It was about who the person was. After this argument, Jia didn't go to work the next day and took a leave of absence. Of course, Jimin missed her, but at that moment, Hajun arrived. As we saw earlier, she had become interested in Gyeomin and wanted to know what he thought of her. At first, Gyeomin thought she meant what he thought about her to introduce her to John, but she clarified that she wanted to know what he thought of her. That made him laugh. But he was furious because he really didn't understand anything. He thought of leaving, but she told him, "I wish you well," and thought about taking him somewhere unattainable. However, Gyeomin wasn't interested and asked her never to step foot in his office again. That night, John was heading home with Sol, but they saw Jia alone. Sol approached her, and although she initially seemed fine, they soon realized she wasn't. John immediately alerted Gyeomin, and soon after, Gyeomin arrived. He thought she was fine and assumed her day off had been for something fun, but soon noticed she was crying. He understood what had happened. Her mother had opposed her seeing him. Jia was crying, but Gyeomin wanted her to understand something. He was very clever and would eventually convince her mother. Jia told him, "I love him so much, boss." And he replied that he loved her too. The next day, as usual, Jin went out for a run. However, that day he was surprised to see Hubo, who never did that, running just to see her. He arrived with so much energy even though he wasn't used to it, and after a short time he was exhausted. He stopped, and at that moment, Jin arrived to see him. He shouted at him, asking what was wrong. Was he crazy? But Jin just wanted to do things for her because he loved her. He knew he had been a terrible husband and had made her suffer. So, he thought this time, he would take on the pain and live through what she had to suffer because of him. That's why he asked Jian to act as he wished. Now he would accept everything. Jian gave him water, and after that, Jian ran off again. Jaebon knew that this was the only way he would win her over, because he wanted to show that he was truly sorry. On the other hand, Jae was about to kill a crazy guy who had used her card and spent millions of won on alcohol. She wanted to make him disappear because this was unforgivable. The guy opened the door and was about to escape. Just then, at the entrance, Gyeomin was there. Seeing a man in his girlfriend's house, he was furious. He wanted to know who he was and gave him 10 seconds to answer. The poor guy was terrified. By the time the countdown reached 10, he screamed, "I'm Jia's younger brother." Gyeomin wanted to verify this, so he asked Jia, but she denied it. She said the guy was just a thief and asked Gyeomin to deal with him. After hearing this, Gyeomin had an idea. First, he wanted to know the guy's name, so he started the countdown again. "Boom," the guy said. "Jimmy New." Gyeomin took a good look at him, then asked if he was a model or something. Jimin had tried to audition for several magazines but hadn't found any work yet. Gyeomin, seeing this, told him, "You're going to help me from now on," and took him with him. The next day, Jimin came to see his mother during lunch, but he didn't come alone. He was with Gyeomin. All of Ja's mother's colleagues were delighted, especially when Jimin told her that, thanks to his brother-in-law, he had landed a great opportunity to audition for Company X. This made Ja's mother realize that Gyeomin had just declared war. But in the end, who would win? Weeks passed, and Jaebon's mother, Hajin, wasn't doing well. The chemotherapy treatments were wearing her out, and she was reacting badly. She felt like this wasn't for her. Meanwhile, on the runway, they were taking photos for the new magazine. Today, CEO Kelly arrived and, being so arrogant, started bossing Jaya around, calling her little pig. "Jaya, over here! Bring water!" "Jaya, coffee!" Gyeomin couldn't stand it anymore. Seeing Jia reduced to a servant, unable to focus on her real work, he confronted CEO Kelly in front of everyone, telling her that what she was doing was wrong. Her workers had designated jobs, not to run errands for her. This embarrassed CEO Kelly, but she... On the other hand, Ja was happy. She thought, "My boyfriend is the best." Later that night, Jaebon returned to visit his mother-in-law, who was completely fed up. Just that night, Jinjon arrived and saw his mother-in-law fiercely mistreating Jaebon. For some reason, he felt an immense rage, especially when he saw Jaebon cut himself on a broken plate. He screamed because he didn't understand how Jaebon could let himself be treated that way. Jinjun's mother didn't understand either. Why was Jaebon being treated like that? He had once been her son-in-law and her daughter's husband. At least she should show him some respect. They sat together and Jinjun helped treat Jaebon's wound. At that moment, Jaebon asked him not to be hard on his mother. He wondered how he would feel if his mum died. He felt like a fool for having ignored his mother's heart for so many years. He never imagined his mother would have such a horrible illness, and now he understood that she might not live for much longer. Jaebon began to cry, and Jinjun embraced him. The next day, Jiamin visited Jia, who was a bit upset with him because she found out that he always keeps things to himself, and it hurt her. Though today he wanted to apologize. He wished he had been born into a wealthy family, with great parents to care for him, with so much power that he could get rid of anyone who tried to hurt him, but he couldn't do such a thing. Jia then asked if he really considered himself an adult, because he shouldn't apologize for that, but should be proud of himself. She reminded him that, even though he doesn't have all the things he mentioned, he is wonderful just as he is. On the other hand, Jaebon was so tired, but just then his mother-in-law arrived. She didn't understand what had happened, but after hearing about the struggles in Jaebon's home, she understood that he was a great man. That day, she brought food for his mother, lightly seasoned, and food for him as well. She added that he should have faith, that all of this would pass soon. Meanwhile, Hajun was thinking about the reproaches he had made to his father. He was a doctor, and even so he failed to realize his wife was suffering. Hajun desperately begged his father to help his mother, to save her. Just then, Damyeon was about to leave the clinic when he noticed a light was still on. He entered and saw Hajun. He apologized for disturbing him, but Hajun told him he knew what to do with his wish. He asked Damyeon to be his drinking buddy for the next few days. On the other hand, Jia's mother was finishing work, but it was raining heavily. She had no choice but to go out in the rain. Just then, Jiamin arrived and gave her his umbrella. He didn't want to bother her, but simply understood that there was no greater pain in the world than losing a family member. Therefore, health was the most important thing. After that, he left. That night, Jia returned the umbrella, and her mother had left a pair of shoes for Jiamin. It seemed that Jia's mother had finally understood, and that made them both very happy. Since it was Friday, what better than to take a walk together? So they went to Busan. Being completely alone was the most pleasant thing for both of them. No one would interrupt them, at least not that night. However, the next morning, while they were having breakfast, a young man, an ex-classmate of Jia's from university, appeared. He shamelessly began flirting with her. Jia didn't know what to say, but Jiamin became jealous. He introduced himself as Jia's boyfriend and asked the man to leave. Even when the man left his card for Jia to call him any time, Jia, furious with jealousy, clarified that they came here to enjoy their time together, and Jia shouldn't be looking at other men. After this sweet remark, Jia suddenly shouted, "I really want to get married!" This surprised Jiamin. After that, Jia pretended she hadn't said anything, ignoring Jiamin's repeated questions about what she had said. Meanwhile, Jaebon was drinking with his best friend, who didn't understand why he always had to push him to achieve something. What seemed illogical was understanding why he divorced if he loved her so much. He then said, "This is the last thing I'm doing for you. Take advantage of it." Just then, Jinjun arrived, as this best friend was Jinjun's brother. He left them alone, and Jaebon, lost in thought, hadn't prepared anything and didn't know what to say. However, the alcohol helped, and they talked between drinks until Jaebon was completely drunk. Seeing this, Jinjun decided to take him home. He wanted to ignore it, leave him as he was, but couldn't. He changed his clothes to make him comfortable, though when he saw him like this, he didn't understand if it was the alcohol or something else. He looked so handsome. He tried to ignore it, but at that moment Jaebon reacted, grabbed him and threw him onto the bed. He had wanted this for a long time. He'd told Jinjun he would give him enough time to ask him to stop, but after that he wouldn't. Jinjun didn't have the strength to fight against his heart. Finally, there was reconciliation. The next day, Seo Kelly and her daughter Hajun arrived at the Runway, waiting for the chief editor. Just then Jia arrived, and once again they asked her to bring coffee. As she approached, Kelly expected Jiao to apologize, and Jiao understood it was for what happened before. She had no choice but to bow to her. However, to the bad luck of these women, Yomin, the chief editor, arrived. Seeing this, he ran over to Harjun, demanding she apologized for the time she stole his wallet. Harjun tried to explain that it was going to fall, but Jiomin had no mercy. When he saw she wouldn't apologize, he forced her to bow before him, and her mother didn't defend her. After that, Kelly ordered them to leave. Jia felt a bit sorry for Harjun, but couldn't do anything about it. Kelly was surprised by Jiomin's actions, not understanding why he was so determined to ruin her reputation at the company, but it wasn't that, he just hated injustice. Then Kelly understood. He defends editor Yu because she's his girlfriend, right? Jiomin didn't deny it, and since there was nothing at work that prevented them from being together, he didn't feel the need to explain. This disappointed Kelly, but Jiomin didn't care. He knew he had so much influence, even in France, and warned her that if anyone dared to touch his girlfriend, he'd ruin their life. Meanwhile, Harjun was angry with herself for almost being swayed by that man. When she saw him so vulnerable that day, she thought he was a good person and that they could heal their wounds together. But he was nothing like she thought, just a piece of trash. On the other side, Jiamin was waiting for Kelly to leave his office. She got to her car, and there she waited for her daughter, who was crying. Her mother told Harjun that if she wanted editor Yomin, her mum would give him to her. Meanwhile, at the clinic, Damian was about to inform Harjun that he was going home, but he tripped and Jian helped him. At that moment, he offered to take Damian home. Later, Jinjun was leaving work when Kijun asked if he could accompany her somewhere to talk. She agreed, but just as they were planning where to go, Jaibon appeared. Once again, he opened the car door, asking Jinjun not to leave with Kijun, to stay and go somewhere together. Kijun didn't understand, but Jinjun took the opportunity to ask if she was willing to get to know him better. Jaibon, feeling jealous, was going crazy. However, Jinjun understood. He grabbed Jaibon by the shirt and told Kijun that this germ of society was a headache-causing bacteria, but at the same time it was beneficial. He apologized but knew that this germ would never be able to get out of his life, and now he was ready to give this germ a chance. That was the right thing to do for his heart. Weeks passed, and Hirachell accompanied her mother to a medical checkup. It seemed that they would need to change her medication since it wasn't working. However, her mother decided to stop chemotherapy, asking how much time she had left. Later that day, Hirachell went to see Yomin, who was standing in the rain. Jomin ran over with an umbrella, not understanding what was happening. Then it was announced that her mother was about to quit. She was going to abandon them from that moment on. They wrote to Jaibon, telling him that together they needed to give her a reason to keep living. Jaibon immediately called Jinjun, asking for help with a compassionate lie. Meanwhile, Tammy was about to go out for drinks with a friend, but just then Jian arrived and asked her to grant him one more wish, even though it might seem selfish on his part. At the same time, Jiamin arrived to see Jia, who was supposedly still working but was actually watching a soap opera. Jiamin was startled by this, but then his boss told Jia that it was time for her to meet his mother. That same night, the three ladies arrived at the door of the mothers of these three wonderful men. They all called her Mother. And she was so surprised, they gave her flowers and each introduced themselves. Except for Jian, of course. His mother was very surprised. At least they could have warned her they were coming. Quickly she ran out, and after a few hours she got ready and prepared a grand dinner for everyone. She was so happy to meet her son's girlfriends. Domi told her that she had just started dating Harjun, and Sol was already calling her Mum. Although Domi was sweet and liked the idea, the most important thing for her was to see her son's happiness. Just then, Jay shared a piece of news that surprised everyone. Jinjun was pregnant. It sounded excessive, but it made his mother so happy. Jinjun asked her to please stay healthy so she could enjoy her grandchild, and this was more motivation for her and for all three of her beautiful sons. Days later, Jinjun couldn't believe it. The reconciliation with Jaibon had led to an absolute truth for their compassionate lie. God was blessing them, giving them a second chance because she was pregnant. Meanwhile, his relationship with Hajun and Jomon was improving. However, Jomon still feared that this fool might continue pursuing Ja. Still, Hajun opened his eyes and told him that it seemed like Ja did have someone in her life, Ms. Damion, who was crazy about him. On the other hand, Chun was feeling terrible. She felt so lonely and, whenever she had the chance, tried to steal something. However, they soon realized it, and this time, it wasn't just anyone. She had stolen from an important businessman, a known associate of her mother. Her mother quickly approached, but Jawn called her mum, which left the businessman stunned, making him wonder, is this woman really the daughter of the CEO? That same day felt like a call from God, or something that happened to bring them to a date on the building's rooftop. Everything was perfect. Jia and Guomin were enjoying their time together. However, Jia suddenly saw that Hajun was about to jump off the building. Hajun was so frustrated with her life, remembering the horrible words from her mother. With every word she heard, she wanted to leave this world. But before making that crazy decision, Jiomon saved her. He asked Jia to call the CEO immediately and tell her that her daughter urgently needed to see a psychiatrist. What seemed like a heroic moment would soon turn into a nightmare. Hajun was upset, hurt, and filled with a desire for revenge against Jiomon. How dare he save her? The next day, Jinjun met Jaibon for lunch. Not knowing where to start, she bluntly told him that she was pregnant. She showed him the 3 tests she had taken, and seeing this, Jaibon was overwhelmed with joy. He was so happy it felt like a dream. He ended up holding her and spinning her around. Today he was the happiest man in the world. Kneeling before her, he vowed to work hard for both of them. It seemed that everyone deserved a second chance, and now they had theirs. Meanwhile, at the clinic, Ha-jun was about to leave when Domi bravely asked to talk to him privately. She began by telling him that today marked the 3rd anniversary of her one-sided love for him, a love that he knew she had. How sweet! On the other hand, Jaibon was talking to his best friend, who also happened to be his brother-in-law. He learned that Jaibon was so lucky he was about to become a father. But the worst part was hearing that Jaibon and Jinjon would get married again. To his brother-in-law, it sounded like a bad joke, but now he could honestly say that love had completely driven him mad. Elsewhere, Jiamin was leaving work when he ran into Ha-jun. She grabbed him and wanted to talk, but he was always cold toward her. Still, he listened to what she had to say. When she said nothing more, he told her it wasn't necessary to thank him. He understood, and then walked away, leaving her completely furious. Later, he met his mother, who was excited to visit him. She asked if her wig looked good, and of course he agreed, but then she asked her son if he was planning to marry Jia. He barely knew her, but he knew she was a good girl, and even though it might be a little too soon, Jia had already thought about it. His mother was happy to hear this because she hoped they would advance their wedding plans since she wanted to be close to her son. That day, Jiamin began to plan everything, but he asked the wrong person for help, Jiamin, the office gossip. Jiamin wanted to know what the most beautiful marriage proposals had been, and he promised to help Jiamin if he gave him an expensive watch. And so, the plan for the proposal began.